Okay, so I'll start with first question. Well, isn't it that classical education is actually just a good education or quality education?
Well, I prefer to use the word formation because education is just about data points. Formation is about the whole person. So yes, it is good education, but it's good education because it's good anthropology. It understands the human person in all of our details, which is what makes this so difficult to understand. If you're finding yourself lost at certain points, you resonate with parts of it and then don't understand other parts of it, that's fine. That's just like meeting a new friend, not knowing. We're a dynamic people. I mean, when you're talking about education and memory and beauty and God and decency and virtues and all of these things, it's very complex. So yes, it is education, but look at the educational systems and what they put out. Again, I don't know Slovakia as much as I know the United States, but you have some of the crudest, immoral people coming out with very prestigious degrees from our greatest universities. And then they become preoccupied with all kinds of peripheral things that have nothing to do. And then the politicization of even they're attempting to politicize the sciences. It's very difficult to politicize science, because if you build a bridge ideologically, it's liable not to stay up, and that'll show you the falsehood of it. With philosophy and the arts, they can get away with a lot more because it's a lot more ambiguous. So yes, it's much more than education.
Thank you very much. I'll ask one question from the discussion panel before, but I think it was more for you. Is it really true that pragmatic pedagogy is in opposition to classical education? Isn't it just part of classical education?
Isn't it just
one part of classical education?
You know, this is a category error. It's exactly, the way the question is formulated exactly underscores the confusion of what we're talking about. It is not applied practical, how did you call it, practical pedagogy?
Pragmatic.
Pragmatic pedagogy, as applied classical education, has the cart before the horse. How are you going to apply things if you don't know who the person is, if you don't know what the content is? If classical education is what I'm saying it is, namely the formation of a person, part of the formation of a person is not the practicality of it, it's the prudence. It's the virtue of prudence that tells you how to bring the truth into a concrete form in your circumstance. So if that's what you mean by practicality, yes, it's how you apply the truth. But I think even the word practicality is an attempt to take it out of the virtues, which is what's so dangerous about secular education.
Thank you. How can be Catholic education attractive for post-Christian youth?
How can we make it attractive? This is part of what I'm saying, you know, and I heard some of the discussion. First of all, it depends on the youth, right? It depends on the stage. What attracts young people? And they're attracted at different levels, different stages of their own development to different things. And understanding that, first of all, gives you something about how to get into their head. But secondly, it's knowing that the human person, that human nature is real. It's not a construct, it's not a social construct, it's real. There's a continuity of people from culture to culture, even culture to culture, and historically, which is why memory is so important. So that if human nature was not real, we wouldn't understand the ancients. We wouldn't understand anything about them. Now, there are things about them that we don't understand, but the point is that there's more comprehensibility between the ancients and moderns than there is incomprehensibility. And so I think with children, developing ways at appropriate levels to speak to them the truth that captivates, the truth itself captivates, and then they fall in love with the truth. So it's a question of how to present ideas in ways that are appropriate to the age levels and captivate them. Here's a metaphor. I don't know if you know how to catch a monkey. If you want to catch a monkey, what you do is you get an empty coconut, and you put in the coconut some smaller nuts. You tie one end of the coconut, you put a hole through it and get a string and tie it, and you rattle what's in the coconut and throw it out, holding on to your end of it. And then you wait for the monkey to come down from the tree. And the monkey will pick up the coconut and rattle it and be attracted and curious about what's inside of it. And it will reach into the coconut to get the nut, but it can't get its hand out as long as it's holding the nut. And then you can reel in the monkey. This may be an inept metaphor for what we're doing, but it's a matter of captivating young minds and let them grasp hold of it in such a way that their freedom will be redirected to the truth. And that's what we're trying to do. The truth captivates people. Jesus says, if I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to myself. And he still does that. The problem is we have to have the confidence that that can happen. And if there's one element to this whole idea that can destroy it, is that we ourselves don't have the confidence. You have to be prepared yourself in the first place to be countercultural. You have to stand up and say, Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world. And we're going to live as though that's true. And then we're going to form communities around us as though that's true. And then you begin to do it and the momentum builds up. And young people, just like they're attracted, I mean, what is attractive about some of this modern music or these modern influencers? You know, you look at it, you say, how can people do this to themselves? But there was a nut inside the coconut for these kids to grasp onto, and they're pulled in that direction. We have to do it in the opposite direction, but we have to believe in it.
Thank you. We have talked a lot about formation of children, and we also have touched ideas of how to form or provide formation for teacher. What do you do in formation of your teachers?
Well, we were fortunate because in Michigan we have a college called Hillsdale College, not very far from where we were. By the way, I didn't tell you this. Once I began these changes at the school, letting the public school teachers go, requiring mass attendance every day, some of the older teachers decided they were ready to retire. And so they left. So we were left without a lot of teachers. So Hillsdale College has a formation program for teachers in the classical model. So individual teachers would have an expertise in individual topics. And so we went down there. Every year they have it's called a job fair. It's where different different schools come and try and entice the new graduates to come and work for them. And we went there, and as it turned out, there were a lot of the Catholic graduates who were fascinated to see a classical Catholic school, and they wanted to work in that environment. And so we were fortunate to have them come. They came, however, without the required state credentials, because in the Michigan, well, in the United States generally, if you have 4 years of education to become a teacher, roughly half of that is management techniques within a classroom, so that only half of your education is on the topic that you have a degree in. Or some just come with an education degree without any particular expertise in a discipline, maybe a few classes here and there. Our teachers knew their subjects, and so we began mentoring them with people. And then now, with the founding of the John Henry Newman Institute, we have now worked with others to developing a credentialing program so that our teachers are all credentialed by a recognized credentialing body, and we're helping others to do that, and an accreditation system. That is the accreditation for the school itself, so that they have a recommendation to universities. So, and I should mention too, as just a side growth of this that we didn't do, but it just grew out of this naturally, is a trade school. Father, how do you call it? Where is my Salesian friend? Il mio amico saligiano, dove sei? Ecco, come si dice l'educazione praticale qui in Slovacchia? Come? Okay. In Slovakian, how do you say? So this was an outgrowth of Sacred Heart, but they're teaching a classical approach in a very practical way. And this is for the high school graduates. So instead of going to a college, they go to this school. Harmel Academy is the name of it. And when they get out, they will be earning more than intern medical doctors will, by changing tires or building homes or unplugging drains or putting roofs on houses. And they will also know a bit about Aristotle and Plato and St. Thomas Aquinas and the rest.
Thank you very much. We have a question.
Hello, thank you, Father Siricom, for a great proportion of academic lecture, and then nice stories and practicalities. My name is Michal, and I'm from private school, small private school here in Bratislava. And I wanted to ask you how to keep a balance in our language. And of course, we are using Catholic language, and we are naming things that are universal, and we are teaching universal truths in our schools. However, still, if we use too clerical language or too Catholic language, it might close the communication channel with some families, with some potential clients of our schools that might in the future be evangelized or be baptized in the end. No, this is what we want. So, yeah, how to teach these universal truths in a language that communicates with current culture, with today's world. Thank you.
Well, there's going to be a discontinuity. There's going to be a disconnect. We have to accept that, because what we're presenting is something they're going to shift. You know, at some point there has to be a shift. I think one element of what you're saying is something that we need to pay good attention to, and that is that we don't speak the language of a cult. You notice that there are different religious groups that are so narrow that they understand themselves, but on the outside, no one understands them. There's a lot of jargon. We don't want to do that. We're not a cult. What we are is, you know, a view of the universal. So we have to be very careful. And the way in which I think we do that is to try and find parallel words, or to be very conscious about defining what we mean by that. Because very often people will use words and they don't really understand the meaning of it. And so I think defining those words. So I think that's one element. What you're raising is true. We need to work against being seen as culty, as narrow, and but we are Catholic, so we're open to people of goodwill. The light of Christ is the light that shines in every human heart. There is some element of God's call in every human heart. So I think more important than language is relationship, is letting people know that you value them and that you care about their children and that you want to provide a very different alternative. Don't be afraid of the fact that we're different. That can be very attractive. Entrepreneurs spend hours trying to develop a product that is just enough the same as what people are using, but a little different, that attracts people to shift from this brand of toothpaste to this brand of toothpaste. So I think we need to have the confidence in what we're doing to say, this is different than what you have. And if you want to keep doing that, go ahead. But this is what we have produced. These are the children. Look at them. I mean, the best advertisement for this is the group of these little kids singing the Salve Regina, And for people who are repulsed by that, we don't want you in our school. We want people in the school who are attracted, who think they are attracted to this, because then we can nurture that. The transformation that's going to take place is not just in our systems, and it's not just in the children's lives. It's going to be in the formation of the parents, too. The parents have to be involved in this formation. That's another thing that's very important, and why we were blessed when we began to have so many homeschooling families, because the homeschooling families were used to being involved in their children's education. Today, send the kid out. I don't have anything to do with it. I heard, I think I mentioned this yesterday, a teacher who said, we're in charge. When your kids are in our school, we're their parents. No, I'm sorry. You, parents, are the expert in your child, and we're there to help you to do that. So I wouldn't be afraid to say, maybe this isn't for you, because we want families that are on board with this vocation, that who understand at least part of this. They're going to be formed more, I promise you. The formation is not going to be just in the child. It's going to be in the family and then in the community and the culture we build. So have confidence in that. We don't need everyone who comes. And I think, keeping a balance, I think it's good to bring in people who are on the margins, but to keep the counterbalance, the weight of the people who understand what we're doing and who are invested in it.
I think this will be the last question. So if there is any question from you.
Thank you. We've been hearing a lot today about classical education. And I think for many people here, it's quite a challenge because they're getting to know a new friend. And you use this parallel with the friendship and classical education, that you need to spend more time with a friend. Do you remember for yourself, when was the moment that you realized, oh, now I know you, my friend, classical education, now I get it? Do you remember those talks with your friend, priest, when he was introducing you to the classical education?
You're using the metaphor of a relationship. So if I may continue that metaphor, I would say that it's like a man who sees a woman across the room who is intriguing, and then he goes over and speaks to her and finds that she is indeed intriguing and witty and mysterious. And then he comes back another day and he learns a little bit more about her. And the two of them begin to become infatuated with one another. And then eventually the two of them fall in love and are married. That was my experience with classical education. Right at the beginning, before this man I mentioned who knew something about classical education, I was speaking with the superintendent of the schools of the diocese, who has a doctorate in education and who simply does not understand classical education and is intimidated by it because he's the expert. Well, I was speaking with him before I knew anything about it, and he was saying, well, we have a lot of different models. And then he described this whole model of having these iPads in the classroom, and then the children can take them home and study from home, and we can get other people in, and there were a lot of descriptions like this, or just a whole variety of different options he was putting on the table for me. And he mentioned one. Now, this is very American, so you might not understand it, but there was a movement, so now it's more than a decade ago, in the United States to have a core curriculum that was very much developed by the secular establishment. We call it teaching to the test. So you have this test that you're going to take at some point, the children are going to take, and the whole curriculum was oriented on teaching that test. So when the child takes the test, the child can pass the test. And I was interested in what this was about because, again, I knew nothing about education. And this fellow, his name is Tom Good, came and began to describe to me an alternative way to see it. And it was initially difficult, complex for me, intriguing, like the woman across the room, intriguing to me. But then after a while, I became infatuated, and I understood, this is it. And like love, it keeps unfolding because I'm still being formed by this. I mean, to see the way you're doing it here is a confirmation and also a challenge to me. And I can't wait to go back and tell my colleagues. The Newman Institute stands ready to help. Not only you know that, Martin, but other schools. And I'd love to brainstorm with you on how we can help accelerate that. We have no vested interest ourselves in what you're doing. This is your thing. But if we can contribute to what you're doing in any way that we can practically, I would love to do that with you. It just strikes me that one of the first things you might want to do is what we did when we began, and that was we sat down with other people who were doing similar things, and we just began to talk. We found what was going on, what worked, what didn't work, and what was needed. And from that, we developed a common agenda with our differences, and went forward with that. So we're available, and Martin knows that.
Thank you very much.
And Martin Luther, when I got a letter from Martin Luther, I was a little dubious, but I said, I will go and post my 95 thesis on the church door.
Thank you. Father Siricom, thank you for sharing your personal story of love for classical education and for your time.